In the beginning, there was only sand and wind. The world of Tatooine was quiet in its own way, even with the bustle of its dusty cities and the occasional whir of pod racers streaking through the desert flats. But in the shadows of that distant outer rim world, something remarkable was waiting. A boy, born not of nobility or legacy, but of humble beginnings, lived as a slave beneath twin suns. His name was Anakin Skywalker, and though no one knew it then, he would change the galaxy forever. Anakin's early life was simple, hard, and filled with dreams. He lived with his mother, Shmi Skywalker, in a small, crowded hovel in Mos Espa, working under the ownership of a junk dealer named Watto. He wasn't treated cruelly, but slavery hung over him like a silent weight. Despite this, Anakin remained kind-hearted, full of curiosity and energy. His love for machines became his way of coping. He built droids from scrap, including one named C-3PO, and was a skilled pilot even before he could see over the controls. In his spare moments, he would gaze up at the stars and wonder what life was like beyond the sand dunes, beyond the walls of his reality. Anakin didn't know why he could do the things he could do, why he could sense things before they happened, why he could react faster than anyone else, or why machines seemed to speak to him without words. His mother told him he was special, but mothers always say that. Still, there was something undeniably different about Anakin. He didn't know it, but the Force was with him, strongly, more strongly than any being the Jedi had ever encountered. It was fate, then, that brought Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn to Tatooine. The Jedi had made a stop on the desert world during a diplomatic mission gone awry. They were searching for parts to repair their ship, but Qui-Gon sensed something else, something unexpected. When he met Anakin, he recognized a powerful presence. The boy was strong in the Force, unusually so. Qui-Gon believed Anakin might be the chosen one, a being prophesied to bring balance to the Force. To prove Anakin's potential, Qui-Gon entered him into the Boonta Eve Classic Pod Race, a dangerous event where humans rarely competed due to the extreme reflexes required. But Anakin not only raced, he won. In doing so, he secured the parts the Jedi needed, and more importantly, his own freedom. But there was a cost. His mother, still a slave, could not be freed. Anakin was forced to say goodbye to the only family he had ever known. He was just 9 years old when he left Tatooine behind, with a small bag of belongings, a heart full of hope, and a new destiny ahead of him. At the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Anakin faced skepticism. The Jedi Council sensed his immense power, but they also saw danger in his future. He was too old to begin training by their standards, and his emotional attachments, especially to his mother, were unusual for a Jedi initiate. But Qui-Gon was persistent, believing that the will of the Force had brought Anakin to them. Before the Council could fully decide, fate intervened once more. On the planet Naboo, a conflict was brewing. The Trade Federation had launched an invasion, and Queen Padme Amidala, whom Anakin had met and grown fond of, was at the center of it. The Jedi accompanied her back to her home world, and during the ensuing battle, Anakin once again proved his mettle. Trapped in a starfighter, he piloted it into the heart of a droid control ship and destroyed it, an act that helped secure victory for Naboo. It was then that the Council reconsidered. Despite Qui-Gon's tragic death at the hands of a Sith Lord named Darth Maul, the Council allowed Anakin to be trained. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon's Padawan, promised to train the boy and honor his master's final wish. The years that followed were a blend of discipline and struggle. Jedi training was rigorous. Obi-Wan, now a knight, was firm but fair. He believed in Anakin, but their relationship was complicated. Obi-Wan had not chosen Anakin. He had inherited him, and both of them knew it. Still, over time, a bond grew. They became brothers in arms, fighting together in battles and growing through shared hardship. Anakin matured quickly, mastering forms of lightsaber combat and becoming a brilliant tactician. But inside him, something else was growing, a restlessness, a hunger for control, a need to protect those he loved at any cost. Anakin's emotional attachments deepened when he was reunited with Padme Amidala. Now a senator, she remained strong-willed, graceful, and deeply committed to peace. Their bond, forged years earlier on Tatooine and Naboo, reignited with quiet intensity. It was forbidden, of course. Jedi were not allowed to form attachments, but Anakin's feelings for her blossomed into love. They married in secret, hiding their union from the Jedi and the Senate alike. Though outwardly confident, Anakin began to feel the strain of divided loyalties. He was a Jedi, bound by duty and honor. Yet he was also a husband, desperate to protect Padme and haunted by visions of her death in childbirth. These nightmares echoed the pain he had experienced when his mother, Shmi, died in his arms after being abducted by Tusken raiders. That moment, filled with sorrow, rage, and helplessness, marked a turning point. He had slaughtered the Tuskens in blind fury, an act that both shamed and changed him. As the Clone Wars erupted across the galaxy, Anakin's role shifted once again. He became a general in the Republic's Grand Army, revered by his troops and feared by his enemies. Beside him fought Ahsoka Tano, a young Padawan assigned to him by the Jedi Council. Though reluctant at first, Anakin grew to care for her deeply. She challenged him, made him laugh, and in many ways reflected the best parts of himself. But when the Council failed to support her during a crisis of loyalty, Anakin's faith in the Jedi began to crack. Their rigid adherence to protocol, their inability to trust, and their growing entanglement with politics made him question everything he had once believed. That inner conflict deepened as Chancellor Palpatine, leader of the Republic, and secretly the Sith Lord Darth Sidious began to whisper in his ear. Palpatine offered friendship, guidance, and above all, the promise of a way to save Padme from death. He played on Anakin's fears, his doubts, and his desire for control. Anakin wanted to protect. He wanted to save lives, especially Padme's. The dark side offered a path to do just that, or so he believed. And so, step by step, the boy from Tatooine edged closer to a choice that would reshape the galaxy. The sand and wind of his childhood had long faded. In its place stood a man, a Jedi, a husband, a warrior, torn between light and shadow. War had a way of hardening hearts, of shifting ideals slowly, quietly, until even noble causes became stained by doubt. For Anakin Skywalker, the Clone Wars marked his transformation from gifted Jedi Knight to conflicted soldier, tasked with decisions no one should have to make. Though he remained a beacon of courage on the battlefield, admired by clone troopers and civilians alike, something deeper was changing within him, small fractures forming along his soul. Every mission brought new loss. The faces of those he couldn't save lingered in his thoughts. He felt it in his chest, the weight of command, the burden of consequence. Jedi teachings emphasize calm, detachment, and trust. in the will of the Force. But Anakin was not built that way. His heart was too strong, too full of emotion. He couldn't stand by while others suffered. His need to act, to control outcomes, to prevent harm at any cost. These were traits the Jedi viewed as dangerous. Yet to Anakin, they felt like compassion. In the quiet moments between battles, Anakin found brief peace in his secret life. Padme was his sanctuary, his anchor. They cherished stolen time together, whispered conversations behind closed doors, moments where war and duty melted away. Yet even in their love, anxiety stirred. Anakin's dreams of her death continued to haunt him, each one more vivid, more real. He felt the same powerlessness he had known when he lost his mother. He vowed not to let it happen again. This time, he would stop it. The tension between Anakin and the Jedi Council began to grow. He felt their distrust, their hesitance. They acknowledged his skill, but feared his unpredictability. He was not the traditional Jedi, and they knew it. When Chancellor Palpatine appointed Anakin to the Jedi Council as his personal representative, the Council accepted, but refused to grant Anakin the rank of Master. It was a deep insult, one that cut at his pride. No other Jedi had ever been appointed to the Council without being made a Master. To Anakin, it was confirmation that the Jedi did not truly accept him. Even more difficult was the Council's next request. They asked Anakin to spy on the Chancellor. The very man who had shown Anakin warmth, trust, and guidance was now considered a threat. Anakin was torn. He believed in the Republic, but he had also grown close to Palpatine. The Chancellor had always treated him like an equal, not a subordinate. Palpatine fed Anakin's frustrations with the Council, reinforcing the idea that the Jedi were losing their way, that they were jealous of his power. In this atmosphere of uncertainty, fear, and manipulation, Palpatine revealed his true identity. He was Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who had orchestrated the war from the shadows. Anakin's world stopped. Here was the enemy the Jedi had hunted for years, standing in front of him, calm and unafraid. And yet Palpatine did not attack. Instead, he offered Anakin something no Jedi ever could: the secret to saving Padme's life.
The galaxy changed. The Republic was no more. In its place stood the Galactic Empire, vast and cold, ruled by Emperor Palpatine and enforced by the dark presence that Anakin Skywalker had become. No longer a Jedi Knight, no longer the bright flame he once was, he now walked the halls of warships and battle stations as Darth Vader, cloaked in armor and silence. The man who once dreamed of freedom had become an instrument of oppression. His voice, altered by machines, echoed with mechanical finality. His face was never seen. His feelings, buried. To most of the galaxy, he was more legend than man, a being of relentless power, feared and obeyed. But within the steel mask, a flicker of memory still lived. The pain of loss, the ghost of love, the ache of failure. Vader served the Emperor without question. He hunted the few surviving Jedi who had escaped the Purge, tracking them across barren worlds and ruined temples. Each encounter was a bitter echo of his past. Some Jedi recognized him and pleaded. Others fought, hoping to redeem the friend they once knew. None succeeded. Vader extinguished them all, telling himself that Anakin Skywalker had died on Mustafar, burned away like ash. Yet not all Jedi fell to his blade. Obi-Wan Kenobi had disappeared. Yoda had gone into exile. And somewhere in the shadows of the galaxy, secrets were stirring. Secrets even Vader did not know. While Vader built the Empire's strength through terror, he also wrestled with his own thoughts. His dreams still visited him in the quiet hours aboard his meditation chamber, a place of isolation where he could remove his helmet and feel the air against what remained of his skin. There, alone, he remembered Padmé's smile, her touch, her voice. It never faded. And though Palpatine had told him she died by Vader's own hand, part of him refused to accept it. Her name remained a wound. Years passed. Worlds fell into line. The Empire's grip tightened. Vader trained Inquisitors, dark side agents tasked with hunting the Jedi remnants. He showed them no mercy. They were tools to him like everything else. Yet one Inquisitor once made the mistake of mentioning Padmé's name. Vader's reaction was swift, brutal. No one was permitted to speak of her. Not even a whisper. Still, the Force moved, quiet and patient. On a desert world under twin suns, a boy named Luke Skywalker grew up unaware of his heritage. Hidden by Obi-Wan, Luke lived simply on Tatooine. His days mirrored Anakin's own childhood, racing across sand dunes, repairing droids, staring at the stars and wondering. He longed for purpose, for a future beyond his farmstead. The galaxy, as if waiting, began to call to him. When the Death Star plans were stolen and delivered to the rebellion, fate began to shift again. Leia Organa, Luke's twin sister, though neither knew it, became a key figure in the alliance. Captured by Vader, she resisted him with fierce resolve. He sensed something in her, a strength he couldn't quite name. The Force was strong with her. But his attention soon turned to another. Luke Skywalker appeared like a spark in the night. A boy from nowhere who destroyed the Empire's most powerful weapon with a single, perfect shot. Vader was intrigued. He felt something in the Force. Familiar, dangerous. This boy was not just strong. He was connected to him. Palpatine sensed it too. He instructed Vader to find him. And so began a new pursuit. Vader scoured the galaxy for Luke, not just as an enemy, but as a mystery. Who was this child of the Force? How had he become so powerful so quickly? The truth came slowly. The name, Skywalker, haunted him. In a quiet moment, after interrogating a captured rebel officer, the realization struck: the boy was his son. Shock did not register on Vader's expressionless mask, but inside, something cracked. He had a child. Padmé had been pregnant. Palpatine had lied. She had given birth before she died. Their son was alive, and growing stronger. Hope stirred again, twisted now by the dark side. Vader no longer sought to destroy the boy. He wanted to bring him to his side. Together, they could overthrow the Emperor. They could rule the galaxy. And perhaps Vader could find peace. Their first confrontation came on Cloud City. Vader lured Luke into a trap, hoping to test and break him. The battle between them was fierce, yet uneven. Luke was brave, talented, but inexperienced. Vader disarmed him, severing his hand and his certainty. Then, as Luke hung over the void, Vader spoke the words that shattered everything. "I am your father." Luke refused to believe it. He chose death over submission, letting himself fall into the abyss. But he survived. And the truth grew inside him, painful and undeniable. Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker, his father. A man who had once loved, once dreamed, once been human. Luke didn't give up. He saw conflict in Vader, believed there was still good in him. It became Luke's mission, not to kill his father, but to save him. The rebellion continued to grow, preparing for one final assault on the Empire. Meanwhile, Luke trained in the ways of the Jedi, learning patience, discipline, and the truth of his heritage. He confronted Obi-Wan's spirit and Yoda's teachings, seeking not just strength, but understanding. When he returned to Vader, it was not with anger, but compassion. He surrendered himself, offering his life as a plea for redemption. Vader brought him to the Emperor, who attempted to break the boy with promises and pain. But Luke stood firm. When pushed to the edge, he fought back, only to stop himself at the last moment. He threw away his weapon and said the words that echoed across the Force. "I am a Jedi, like my father before me." Palpatine unleashed his fury. Lightning arced from his fingers, searing Luke with raw agony. Vader watched, torn between duty and love, silence and memory, past and present. Then, at the final moment, he chose. The Father returned. Vader seized the Emperor, lightning coursing through his own body as he hurled him into the abyss. The act cost him everything. His systems failed. His breath faltered. But he had saved his son. Luke carried him to safety. Behind the armor, the real Anakin Skywalker was revealed, pale and scarred, yet at peace. His voice, no longer mechanical, spoke softly. He asked Luke to remove the mask so he could see him with his own eyes. And then, gently, he said his final words. "Tell your sister, you were right. You were right about me." Anakin Skywalker died not as a Sith, but as a father, redeemed by love and compassion. His body faded, and his spirit joined the Force. On Endor, as the rebellion celebrated the fall of the Empire, Luke saw the ghosts of those who had guided him. Obi-Wan, Yoda, and now Anakin, smiling, whole, and free. After the fires of Endor had faded and the echoes of celebration died down among the trees, the galaxy began to breathe again. The empire that once stretched across the stars had lost its heart. Darth Vader was gone. The Emperor was gone. And in their place, something fragile began to take root. Hope. But Anakin Skywalker's story did not end with his final breath. It lived on, in the Force, in his children, and in the quiet spaces where memory still lingered. Though the galaxy had known him as a tyrant, a shadow, a myth cloaked in black, those who truly mattered remembered him differently. Luke Skywalker remembered his father's final act, not of violence, but of love. Leia Organa, though she had never known him as Anakin, would one day feel the pull of her bloodline, the tension of legacy written in her bones. Luke carried the weight of that legacy carefully. He did not speak often of Darth Vader's redemption. To the galaxy, the rebellion had destroyed the Sith, toppled the Emperor, and burned the mask of Vader on a funeral pyre. Few asked what lay beneath that mask. Fewer still knew that beneath the armor was a Jedi, a broken one, a flawed one, but a Jedi all the same. Luke returned to the teachings of the Force, seeking not just wisdom but balance. He traveled, studied, meditated, and slowly began the work of restoring the Jedi Order. But Anakin's story lingered in his thoughts. It was not a tale of triumph or clarity. It was complex, filled with loss, mistakes, and painful choices. Luke understood this. He did not want to repeat those mistakes. But he also knew he must not erase them. They were part of the truth, part of the lesson. In time, Luke found Force-sensitive students. He passed on what he had learned, carefully, gently. But the galaxy was still raw, and the dark side was never far. In the quiet between stars, darkness stirs like a breeze before a storm. And from that darkness, old truths returned, reshaped and reborn. One of Luke's students, a boy named Ben Solo, would inherit the legacy of Anakin in ways neither Luke nor Leia could fully predict. He was strong in the Force, unusually so. From a young age, the shadows whispered to him, just as they had once whispered to Anakin. And like Anakin, Ben felt misunderstood, trapped between the expectations of others and the weight of something within him that he couldn't explain. Leia, feeling the legacy of Vader in her son, never told him the full story. When the truth emerged, that his grandfather had been Darth Vader, it was too late. Ben felt betrayed. The legend of the heroic Skywalker family had been built on a lie. Anger took root. And somewhere in that storm of emotion, the dark side found its way in. Ben Solo became Kylo Ren. And once again, the galaxy trembled beneath the boots of a Skywalker consumed by conflict. But the Force is patient. It weaves past, present, and future into one. Though Ben fell, the memory of Anakin remained. Luke, shaken by his nephew's betrayal, withdrew from the world. He questioned everything, his choices, the Jedi Order, the cycle of light and dark. He saw in Ben the same signs he had seen in Anakin, and he wondered if the pattern could ever be broken. But the truth is never simple. And even in despair, there is the seed of renewal. Far away, in a forgotten place, a scavenger named Rey began her own journey. Born with no name of power, raised without answers, she was drawn to the Force like a leaf carried on the wind. She met Han Solo, saw Leia's quiet strength, and trained under a reluctant Luke Skywalker. Through Rey, the echoes of Anakin's story found new life. She carried the hope that perhaps the past could be faced, not feared. That legacy did not have to define destiny. Luke eventually returned to the light. In his final act, he gave everything he had to protect the Resistance, projecting himself across the stars to confront his fallen nephew. It was not a battle of sabers, but of presence, of peace. In death, Luke became one with the Force, like his father before him. The line continued, not through blood alone, but through choice. Rey's journey brought her to the darkest places of the galaxy. In the heart of the Sith's final stronghold, she stood against Emperor Palpatine, resurrected through ancient Sith secrets and unnatural will. The Emperor offered her power, a throne, the chance to rule. The same temptations he had once offered Anakin. But Rey chose differently. She called upon the Jedi who had come before her, and from the Force, their voices rose, quiet, strong, eternal. Among them was Anakin Skywalker, not Vader, not the Shadow, but Anakin, the man who had been redeemed, who had loved and lost and returned to the light. His voice reminded her that balance was possible, that darkness could be overcome, that the choice to rise mattered more than the fall. Rey defeated the Emperor, not through hatred, but through the strength of all who had come before her. She brought light to a place long buried in shadow. And as the battle ended, the cycle began to break. After the war, Rey chose a new name. When asked who she was, she said quietly, Rey Skywalker. It was not about blood. It was about belonging. About legacy not defined by pain, but by hope. She stood under the twin suns of Tatooine, where Anakin had once dreamed, where Luke had once longed. And in the distance, two figures watched her, Luke and Anakin, at peace. This is where Anakin's story finds its rest, not in fire, not in battle, but in redemption that echoes beyond time. His life had been marked by extremes, slavery and power, love and fear, light and dark. He made choices that shattered the galaxy, but also a choice that saved it. His final act was not for conquest, but for his son, for love, for hope. In the Force, Anakin is remembered, not as a monster, but as a man who was lost and then found again. And so, as the galaxy slowly begins to heal, his legacy remains, not in monuments or statues, but in the courage of those who choose the light even when surrounded by shadow. In the quiet strength of a mother who forgives. In the compassion of a son who believes. In the wisdom passed to a girl with no name, who finds power not in anger, but in connection. Anakin Skywalker's story was not one of perfection. It was one of pain, love, downfall, and return. A human story. A galaxy's story. A reminder that even the darkest night can lead to dawn. Even the most broken soul can be whole again. Rest now, in that knowing. Breathe gently, with the stars above you. The journey of Anakin Skywalker, once tragic and twisted, is now part of something whole. Peace has come. The Force surrounds us. And the story is remembered. When we speak of the Force, we speak of something greater than power or skill. We speak of a current that runs beneath all living things, binding them, guiding them, breathing through them. And for Anakin Skywalker, the Force was not just a gift. It was a path. One filled with light, shadow, and the long silence in between. He was born into the Force in a way no one had ever seen. No father. No lineage. His mother, Shmi, carried him without explanation, without intervention. Many came to believe that the Force itself had created Anakin. That he was the chosen one, destined to bring balance. And in a galaxy teetering on the edge of war, such hope burned brightly. But balance is not peace. It is not silence. Balance is understanding. It is harmony between opposites, between passion and serenity, action and stillness, life and death. The Jedi believed Anakin would destroy the Sith and end their cycle of domination. But perhaps the Force had deeper intentions. Not to erase darkness, but to understand it. To embrace the full spectrum of life. Anakin's life was never still. From his earliest days, he was pulled between extremes. He felt deeply, loved fiercely, and feared terribly. Where the Jedi taught detachment, he longed for connection. Where they urged patience, he felt urgency. His emotions were not flaws. They were part of his humanity. And yet, they became the battlefield within him. 4 years, the Jedi Council watched him with uncertainty. They saw his strength but feared what it might become. In trying to mold him into the ideal Jedi, they overlooked who he truly was. And so, when the dark side whispered promises of control, safety, and the power to protect those he loved, Anakin listened. It was not power that seduced him. It was fear of loss, and the promise that he could stop it. His fall to the dark side was not sudden. It was a slow erosion. Trust broken, guidance absent, love corrupted by desperation. And when he became Darth Vader, it was as if the galaxy itself cracked open. Jedi temples burned. Younglings fell. The Empire rose. But through it all, the Force remained. Watching. Waiting. Knowing that balance cannot be forced. It must be chosen. 4 decades, Vader served the Emperor. He became the sword of tyranny, the enforcer of a vision he no longer questioned. But the Force never abandoned him. It whispered through the memories he could not silence. Through the quiet ache of loss. Through the image of a child he never held. Luke Skywalker was more than a symbol of rebellion. He was the living embodiment of what Anakin could have been: brave, compassionate, open to feeling. And in him, the Force found a bridge between past and future. Luke did not fight his father with hatred. He reached out with love. And that love became a key. It unlocked the door Anakin had long sealed shut. In the moment of choice, standing between the Emperor's wrath and his son's agony, Anakin returned. Not with anger, but with clarity. He remembered who he had been, who he still was. He chose not to dominate, but to protect. Not to control, but to release. And in doing so, he fulfilled the prophecy, not by destroying the dark side, but by ending the Sith's grip on it. Balance was restored not through violence alone, but through a single act of selfless love. This is the lesson Anakin left behind. Balance in the Force is not the absence of emotion. It is not the denial of self. It is the harmony of opposites. The acceptance of shadow, not its destruction. The Jedi had once believed that feeling was dangerous, that detachment was purity. But Anakin showed the cost of ignoring the heart. And the Sith, in seeking absolute control, lost all humanity. True balance lives between. In choice. In presence. In forgiveness. The Force echoes across time. It carries the wisdom of those who came before, and the questions of those who come after. And in the stillness of that current, Anakin's spirit remains, not as Vader, but as the man who learned too late and still chose to return. His voice, heard by Rey and others, speaks with the quiet weight of redemption. A reminder that the path is never truly closed. That the light is never truly gone. Anakin's legacy is not written in statues or chronicles. It is felt in the heartbeats of those who choose peace in the face of rage. Who choose compassion when hatred is easier. Who see others not as tools, but as reflections. The Jedi who follow now are different. Less bound by rules. More open to the truth that the Force is a living thing. Ever changing, ever listening. Even those who once feared his name have come to see the fuller picture. Leia, though she struggled with the truth of her lineage, carried her father's strength. Not his darkness, but his courage. His will. She saw the cracks in the old ways and forged something new, an alliance of heart and purpose. Through her, through Luke, through Ben, through Rey, the ripple of Anakin's life continued. Ben Solo's story, too, became a mirror of Anakin's. Born into light, pulled toward shadow, haunted by expectations, tempted by legacy, and like his grandfather, he fell. But again, love reached out. Rey's compassion became a thread that drew him back. In his final moments, Ben chose to give, not take. To heal, not destroy. And in that choice, Anakin's legacy of redemption deepened. Another echo of balance. Some say the Chosen One prophecy was fulfilled when Vader destroyed the Emperor. Others believe it was Rey who truly ended the Sith. But perhaps the prophecy was never about a single moment. Perhaps it was about the journey. The slow, painful, beautiful unfolding of understanding across generations. The recognition that the Force is not about victory, but about wholeness. In the quiet of the Force, there are no sides, no battles, only presence. Anakin, now one with that current, is free. Free of armor, free of pain, free of names. He is not Jedi or Sith. He is simply part of the balance. And in that space he watches, not to judge, but to guide. To remind. The stars move on. New stories begin. But the old ones are not forgotten. They are written in the silence between comets. In the whisper of wind across forgotten temples. In the hum of a lightsaber ignited not for war, but for peace. Anakin Skywalker's journey is not just a cautionary tale. It is a testament to the complexity of the soul. To the way love can falter, and still return. To the truth that even in the deepest night, dawn waits. So rest now, in that knowledge. Let the breath of the Force cradle you, like the soft hush of waves against a distant shore. The story continues, always. But this chapter, Anakin's chapter, settles now into memory. Still, gentle, whole. The Clone Wars changed everything. Across the galaxy, stars that once shimmered in peace dimmed beneath the weight of endless battle. Planets became battlegrounds. Families were divided. Temples fell quiet. And in the heart of it all stood Anakin Skywalker, no longer the boy from Tatooine, but a Jedi Knight, a general, a symbol of strength. Yet within, the winds of conflict stirred far deeper. When the war began, the Jedi were transformed from peacekeepers into warriors. They commanded legions. They made impossible decisions. And for Anakin, it was a strange fit. He was brave, yes. He was powerful. But something about war called to the darker parts of him. The parts that sought control, certainty, victory at all cost. And yet, in those days, Anakin also grew. His bond with Obi-Wan Kenobi deepened. No longer just student and teacher, they became brothers, comrades, survivors of the same fire. They fought side by side in endless campaigns, Christophas, Umbara, Kamino, and beyond. Their trust was forged through hardship and humor, their arguments sharp but rooted in care. Obi-Wan saw Anakin's brilliance and pain, though not always clearly. He tried to guide, to steady, but sometimes he too was swept up in the chaos. The Clone Wars brought Anakin another companion, someone unexpected. A young Togruta Padawan named Ahsoka Tano. Assigned to him by Yoda, perhaps to teach him patience, perhaps to temper his recklessness. At first, Anakin resisted. He didn't want a student. He didn't want to be responsible for another life. But Ahsoka was fearless, clever, and honest. She challenged him. She made him laugh. And slowly, she became like a sister. A spark of light. Their missions together were many. They liberated people, solved mysteries, uncovered plots. Ahsoka grew under his guidance, but she also reflected something pure in him, something he hadn't lost. With her, Anakin showed kindness, vulnerability, even gentleness. He protected her fiercely, but also trusted her to stand on her own. Yet even in these victories, darkness crept. Each battle hardened him. Each loss chipped away at his certainty. The Jedi Code urged detachment. But war doesn't allow distance. Every fallen clone was a face he knew. Every innocent caught in the crossfire was a wound. Anakin began to see the Jedi not as guardians of peace, but as blind generals walking into a trap they didn't understand. And then came betrayal. Ahsoka was accused of a bombing at the Jedi Temple. Evidence was twisted. Trust was shattered. Though Anakin believed her innocence, the council doubted. Ahsoka, heartbroken, left the order. She walked away from everything, Anakin included. That moment tore something loose inside him. He had already lost his mother. Now he lost Ahsoka. Not to death, but to distrust. He begged her to stay. She couldn't. She had to find her own path. And Anakin, left behind, questioned everything. If the Jedi could betray her, could they truly be trusted? Still, he fought on. The war raged louder. The Republic slipped further into fear and control. And behind it all, a hidden hand moved, Chancellor Palpatine, whispering, watching. Palpatine had been in Anakin's life since his arrival on Coruscant. He was kind, understanding. He listened when others judged. He praised Anakin's strength, his instincts, his passion. Where the Jedi warned restraint, Palpatine encouraged confidence. Where the Jedi kept secrets, Palpatine spoke plainly. At least, that's how it seemed. And when Anakin began to dream again, visions of Padme dying in childbirth, it was Palpatine who offered answers. He spoke of ancient Sith legends, of powers that could prevent death. Not myth, he claimed. Real abilities. Abilities Anakin could learn. It was a terrible temptation. Anakin loved Padme more than anything. Their marriage was still a secret. But she was his heart. And he had already lost too much. He couldn't lose her, too. The fear returned, sharper, deeper than before. And fear, for Anakin, was always the first step down a steep path. The Clone Wars neared their end. The Jedi sensed the dark side growing, but they were distracted. Spread thin. The Council finally began to distrust Palpatine, but too late. They asked Anakin to spy on him, to betray a friend. And in doing so, they pushed him closer to the edge. Then came the truth. Palpatine revealed himself, not just as Chancellor, but as Darth Sidious, the Dark Lord of the Sith, the architect of the war, the enemy within. Anakin should have destroyed him, but the fear of Padme's death burned brighter than duty. He begged the Council to let him help, to find another way. Mace Windu refused. He went to arrest Sidious without Anakin. And in that final moment, when Windu had Sidious at Saber's point, Anakin chose. He struck down Windu. Not out of hate. Out of desperation. And in that moment, the Jedi fell. Sidious named him Vader. Anakin accepted. It wasn't a sudden change. It was a quiet surrender. A belief that this terrible path was the only one left. If he could save Padme, nothing else mattered. Not the Jedi. Not honor. Not even himself. And so began the final descent. Anakin marched on the Jedi Temple. He led the clones. He struck down those he once called brothers. Even the younglings. His heart cried out, but his mind silenced it. For her. For peace. For control. That was the lie. And he believed it. Padme, when she learned what he'd done, wept. She pleaded with him. She reminded him of who he was. But Anakin was already too far gone. He saw betrayal in every shadow, even in her. And when Obi-Wan appeared beside her, his rage exploded. On Mustafar, among fire and ash, they fought. Not teacher and student. Not brothers. Just two shattered men, clashing over the soul of the galaxy. Anakin raged. Obi-Wan begged. In the end, Anakin fell, not just in battle, but in spirit. Obi-Wan left him broken, burning, alone. Palpatine returned, salvaged what remained. Anakin's body was ruined. His voice, his limbs, his face, all taken. In their place, the black mask, the cold breath, the name Vader fully realized. But that is another story. Let us return now to the time just before that fall. Let us remember the Anakin who laughed with Ahsoka, who traded jabs with Obi-Wan, who fixed his ship with oil-stained hands. The young man who stood on the bridge of a cruiser, watching stars slide past, still believing he could end the war. In those small moments, before the storm consumed him, he was still whole. And in the Force, perhaps he still is. The man who awoke was not the same. There was pain. So much pain. Not just in body but in every thought. Limbs gone. Burned lungs replaced with a breath that hissed like a wound. Vision filtered through scarlet glass. Anakin Skywalker was gone. In his place, encased in black armor and silence, stood Darth Vader. He didn't scream. He couldn't. Even if he wanted to, the sound was not his anymore. The voice that emerged from the mask was deep, mechanical, foreign. It echoed through empty halls, commanding fear. But behind it was a soul in fragments. Palpatine told him Padme had died. That in his anger, he had killed her. Vader staggered. Fell to his knees. He reached for something that wasn't there, someone whose voice no longer called his name. The prophecy he believed in had burned away. The future he fought for had turned to ash. The galaxy was changed, and so was he. He had not saved her. So, he served. He walked among the dead, cloaked in shadow. He hunted the remnants of the Jedi, one by one. Survivors of Order 66. Padawans who had fled. Masters who had once taught him. He felt their fear, their confusion. He offered no explanation, only the red blade of judgment. The galaxy saw the Empire rise in steel and banners. Systems that had once cried out for peace were silenced. Palpatine became Emperor, and Vader, his enforcer, his shadow, his fist. But within the armor, the storm never stopped. There were moments, brief, flickering, when something old tried to reach him. A whisper of her laughter. The feel of Tatooine's sand under his fingers. The way Obi-Wan used to raise one eyebrow when amused. Ghosts. They faded quickly. The dark side was not a place for memory. It demanded control, submission, power, and Vader gave it everything. He had nothing left to lose. He built his fortress on Mustafar, the world where he was broken. It stood among rivers of fire, sharp and alone. A wound made into stone. There, he meditated, surrounded by silence. Seeking purpose in pain. Trying to understand the Force through fury and loss. Palpatine kept him busy. War never ended, it only shifted. The Inquisitors were created to aid in the Jedi hunt, fallen Jedi themselves twisted by fear. Vader trained them harshly, trusted few, and killed those who failed. He taught through survival. There was no room for weakness. No room for past names. He became a symbol. Whole planets surrendered at the sight of his ship. Generals saluted without breath. Children were told stories of the dark figure who punished disobedience. His cape flowed behind him like shadow itself. And yet, beneath all the power, he was still chasing something. He searched the stars for Jedi, yes, but also for traces of her. For secrets that might explain death. For knowledge the Sith had hidden for centuries. He pored over artifacts, hunted whispers, bent the Force to his will. Still, he could not bring her back. He visited Naboo once. In secret. Disguised. The world where they first fell in love. He walked among the streets, veiled in night. He visited the lake, where she once laughed barefoot. He stood at her tomb. He said nothing. He simply stared at her name carved in stone. And then he left. Obi-Wan remained a ghost in his mind. He knew he had survived. Their battle had not ended in death. It was unfinished. That scar ran deepest. The betrayal. The fire. The words. You were my brother. Vader hated that memory most of all, for it still held warmth. The kind that refused to die. Years passed. Vader destroyed rebellions before they could rise. He oversaw the construction of weapons, the Death Star among them. Massive machines of fear and precision. They suited him. Cold, effective, devastating. He walked among officers who dared not meet his eyes. One mistake, one act of arrogance, and he would raise a hand. They would fall choking. But there was still a flicker. Always the flicker. He did not speak of it. He buried it beneath duty, beneath power. He told himself Anakin was dead. But the Force is not so easily fooled. One day, while interrogating a rebel, he felt something strange. A presence. A tremor. Young. Familiar. It pulled at him, subtle at first. Then stronger. A name rose from the shadows. Skywalker. He investigated. A pilot. A boy. The one who destroyed the Death Star. His son. Palpatine had hidden it. Lied. Vader's rage was cold. But beneath it was something else. Hope twisted by years of silence. She had borne a child. His child. And he had lived. From that moment, Vader's mission changed. He hunted the boy. Not to kill. But to find. To turn. He remembered how powerful he had been. The way the Force had once surged through him like fire. The boy would be stronger still. Vader would teach him. Not as the Jedi had taught, but truly. Together, they could overthrow the Emperor. End the lies. Rule the galaxy. No more loss. No more fear. No more chains. He confronted the boy on Bespin. Their duel was harsh. Emotion against experience. The boy fought bravely, but he was untrained. Vader tested him, gauged him, and finally disarmed him, literally. And then came the truth. I am your father. It was not a threat. It was not a trick. It was the one honest thing Vader had said in years. The boy chose to fall rather than join him. Vader watched, silent, not triumphant, not angry, simply watching. He continued the pursuit. Time passed. More battles. The rebellion gained strength. The cracks in the Empire widened. But Vader's thoughts never left his son. Luke. That was his name. The name she might have chosen. The name of hope. And then, they met again. On Ender's moon. The boy turned himself in. Willingly. Not with anger, but with compassion. He saw something in Vader. Not armor. Not fear. A man. A father. Luke believed Anakin was still alive. Vader told him it was too late. That he had accepted his fate. But Luke's belief lingered. He refused to fight. Even as the Emperor goaded him. Even as Vader raised his blade. Luke resisted. And when he did fight, when he struck Vader down, it wasn't hatred that followed. It was mercy. I am a Jedi, he said, like my father before me. Father. The word echoed. And when the Emperor turned on Luke, when the lightning cracked and the boy screamed, something ancient and buried rose up. Not anger. Not vengeance. Love. Vader made his choice. He lifted the Emperor and cast him into the void. And in doing so, he broke the chains. Anakin Skywalker returned. The armor was broken. The breath failed. The voice beneath the mask was soft, cracked, human. Let me look on you with my own eyes. Luke helped him remove the mask. And there, in the soft light, Father looked upon Son. There is good in you, Luke said, holding him close. You were right, Anakin whispered. Tell your sister. You were right. Then he was gone. Not consumed by shadow, but redeemed in light. He had been a slave, a Jedi, a warrior, a monster. But in the end, he was simply Anakin. A man who had loved. A man who had lost. A man who found his way back. Let us sit with him there, in those final moments. No armor. No fear. Just a breath. A face. A whisper of peace. And the stars watching silently above. The galaxy moved on. Stars continued to rise and fall. Systems rebuilt. The Empire fractured under the weight of its own fear. But across it all, from Coruscant's skyline to the sands of forgotten moons, the name Darth Vader remained. Spoken in dread, etched into memory. Few knew the truth. They remembered the mask, the breath, the destruction. They whispered of a figure that walked among flame, whose red blade severed hope. But they did not know the man beneath the armor, the one who loved, the one who lost, the one who found his way back. Anakin Skywalker. Only a handful ever understood him. His son, his daughter, a droid or two who never spoke out of turn. To the rest of the galaxy, Vader died aboard the Death Star, a monster swallowed by his own fire. But in the Force, something shifted. A ripple. The dark side does not give up its servants easily. Redemption is not a transaction. It is a breaking, a surrender. When Anakin cast the Emperor down, he did not reclaim his old life. He gave up everything. He severed the chain he once clung to, and in doing so, returned to the balance he had once abandoned. He became one with the Force, not merely as a memory, but as a presence. The rarest of transformations, a Force ghost. Few ever reach that state. Fewer still after falling so far. But Anakin did. Not because he was powerful, but because he chose the light in the face of the dark. His first steps were silent. He appeared to his son after the battle. Luke cremated his armor on Endor, watching the flames rise in quiet reverence. And then, as the night cooled and the stars emerged, Anakin appeared, not as Vader, but as the Jedi he once was. Young, calm, free. Beside him stood Obi-Wan and Yoda. They said no words. None were needed. The Force speaks in stillness. And in that moment, Anakin stood not as a fallen knight or a feared enforcer, but as a father. At peace. Luke smiled. He understood. He carried that truth with him always. Anakin's legacy would echo in ways even he could not foresee. Leia Organa, his daughter, struggled with it. She had known only Vader. Known his voice in nightmares, his cruelty as part of the rebellion's scars. Learning that he was her father was not a gift. It was a burden. But with time, she understood. Not forgiven. Not forgotten. But understood. She, like her brother, carried the Force. She did not follow the Jedi path. Her power was quieter, more intuitive. But Anakin's presence lived in her strength. In her endurance. In her refusal to break. The galaxy reshaped itself. The New Republic rose. The Jedi Temple was not immediately rebuilt. Luke wandered, seeking, questioning. He trained new students, hoping to restore what had been lost. But always, he remembered his father, not just his fall, but his return. He taught others that no one was beyond redemption. That the Force flows through choice. That the light is always there, waiting. Anakin's ghost did not guide often. The Force is not a path of constant voices. It allows. It nudges. But it does not control. Still, in moments of clarity, during Luke's doubts, his trials, Anakin appeared. Sometimes as a whisper in meditation. Sometimes as a flicker in the corner of vision. Sometimes simply as memory that felt alive. He offered little instruction, only presence. He knew better now than to force a future into being. Centuries later, Jedi would debate his legacy. Some would say he was the chosen one, that by destroying the Sith and casting down the Emperor, he fulfilled the prophecy. Others would argue that his actions caused more harm than good, that balance achieved through blood cannot be true balance. But the Force is not so binary. It is motion, intention. It is the space between fear and hope. Anakin Skywalker stood in that space longer than most. He burned in it, rose through it, and in the end, he chose it freely. The story did not end with Luke. Darkness returned. Empires rise in different masks. One such shadow, the First Order, echoed the past in terrifying clarity. and among its ranks stood another figure born of legacy. Ben Solo, Leia's son, Luke's student, Vader's grandson. He idolized Darth Vader, not Anakin. The helmet was salvaged, burned, bent, and yet, it whispered to him. Whether through memory or manipulation, Kylo Ren believed he was continuing his grandfather's path. He thought that power was destiny, that darkness was strength. But he never knew Anakin. Not truly. That truth came only in pieces. Through Rey, through Leia, through silence and loss. In the end, Ben found his way back. Briefly, painfully. Like Anakin, he gave everything. And in doing so, he found peace. One generation echoing the next. A cycle broken not by violence, but by love. This, too, was Anakin's legacy. The reminder that destiny is not fixed. That lineage is not fate. That redemption, no matter how impossible, is always a choice. Throughout the galaxy, there are places where Anakin's memory lingers. On Tatooine, the wind still blows through the Jundland wastes. In the old Lars homestead, dust settles over silence. Locals speak of the boy who once raced pods, who dreamed of stars. They do not know what became of him. Only that he left. On Naboo, her gardens bloom every spring. Statues of Padme Amidala stand in courtyards, remembered as a senator and a queen. Sometimes, in dreams, Anakin walks beside her again. No politics. No war. Just the lake. Just the sky. On Mustafar, the fortress crumbles. The lava flows on. But the presence that once haunted it has dimmed. Vader's rage no longer echoes in its halls. Instead, there is only stone. Empty and still. The Force moves on. It remembers him, not just as a warrior or a traitor, but as a soul who wandered far and found his way back. Anakin's name is not written in history books. The Jedi do not openly celebrate him. The galaxy prefers heroes who never fall. But those who truly listen, to the Force, to the quiet between stars, they know. He was the boy who dreamed of freeing slaves. The young man who loved too deeply. The knight who broke. The father who returned. And now, he sleeps in the current of the Force. Beyond time. Beyond name. Not clinging. Not fearing. Just being. If ever you find yourself lost, angry, afraid, close your eyes. Breathe. In that stillness, you may feel him. Not to guide you. Not to command. But to remind you, the dark is not the end. And the light is always waiting. The stars have watched over him for a long time now. The boy from Tatooine, the Jedi, the Sith, the father Anakin Skywalker has become part of the quiet light that flows through the universe. His story is not just of battles and power, but of choices, loss, and ultimately peace. Imagine the night sky, vast and infinite, the soft shimmer of distant suns casting a gentle glow somewhere in the calm between worlds. The Force hums quietly, steady and sure, like the heartbeat of the cosmos itself. It carries the echoes of all who have touched it, Jedi and Sith, heroes and villains, but none quite like Anakin. His journey was one of struggle, of falling and rising like a flame flickering against the darkness, sometimes wild, sometimes dim, but never fully extinguished. His path was never simple, born a slave dreaming of freedom and the stars. He was chosen by fate to walk a line between light and shadow. He was strong, stubborn, and full of fire. Those who knew him best saw both his greatness and his pain. His love for Padme Amidala was fierce, tender, and flawed. His friendship with Obi-Wan Kenobi was deep and complicated. His descent into Darth Vader was a fall that shook the galaxy itself, but in the end he found redemption not through victory, but through sacrifice. When he lifted the Emperor into the void, he broke the chains that had bound him, and in that moment he reclaimed the light within. Now his story lives in many forms. It lives in the hearts of his children Luke and Leia, who carried on his legacy in their own way. It lives in the lessons learned by the Jedi who followed. It lives in the quiet places, in the memories of those who felt his presence, and in the Force itself, which remembers all. The Force is eternal. It flows through everything, through stars and planets, through life and death. It is the current beneath all existence, and Anakin Skywalker is part of that current, now flowing freely, unburdened, at peace. Let us imagine for a moment that we too are part of this vast universe, that we feel the Force around us in the rustling leaves, the gentle breeze, the warmth of sunlight that we carry within us, the echoes of those who came before and those who will come after. As you prepare to rest, think of Anakin's journey not as a story of darkness and pain, but as one of hope and light. Even in the deepest shadows there is a chance to return to the light. Even when it feels impossible, there is always a way home. Breathe deeply, let the calm wash over you like a gentle tide. Feel the weight of the day. Lift the worries and fears, dissolve, inhale peace, exhale tension, allow yourself to drift with the current of the Force. Know that you are not alone, that the same strength that guided Anakin through his trials is with you now. Let the stars watch over you as you close your eyes, let the quiet light fill your mind, let your heart find rest. The story of Anakin Skywalker has come to its close for now, but the Force continues, always turning, always moving, and so may you find your own path in the light. Good night. Anakin Skywalker's story begins on the remote desert planet of Tatooine, a harsh and unforgiving world dominated by endless sand dunes, twin suns blazing overhead, and a relentless climate that tested the limits of survival. Tatooine was a place where life was shaped by scarcity and struggle, where moisture farmers eked out a living and the strong survived by their wits and resilience. In this stark environment, a boy was born who would come to shape the fate of the entire galaxy. His story was destined to be extraordinary from the very beginning, marked by mystery, prophecy, and an incredible power that set him apart from all others. Unlike most beings in the galaxy, Anakin Skywalker's birth carried a unique mystique. It was said that he had no biological father, conceived instead through a miraculous interaction with the midi-chlorians, microscopic lifeforms that lived symbiotically within all living cells and served as conduits to the Force. This extraordinary conception led many to believe that Anakin was the prophesied chosen one, the one destined to bring balance to the Force itself. His origins were steeped in legend and speculation, but for Anakin himself, his early life was grounded in the harsh realities of his surroundings. Anakin's mother, Shmi Skywalker, was a slave who lived in the outskirts of Mos Espa, a bustling and often lawless spaceport town on Tatooine. She had endured the brutal conditions of slavery with quiet strength and resilience, raising her son with as much love and care as the circumstances allowed. Shmi was fiercely protective of Anakin and nurtured his innate curiosity and intelligence, even though their life was marked by hardship and deprivation. The bond between mother and son was profound, built on shared struggles and unyielding devotion. From a very young age, Anakin showed remarkable signs of exceptional talent and a deep connection to the Force. Though just a child, he demonstrated an uncanny mechanical aptitude that far surpassed others his age. He could build and repair complex machines with ease, from simple droids to the intricate pod racers that were popular on Tatooine. Pod racing was a dangerous and exhilarating sport, often lethal, requiring extraordinary reflexes, courage, and skill, qualities that Anakin possessed in abundance. His reputation as a gifted pod racer spread quickly, and many were amazed by the boy's natural talent. Anakin's mind was bright and endlessly curious. He thirsted for knowledge about the world beyond Tatooine and dreamed of freedom from slavery, from the dusty sands, and from a life of limitation. Yet even as he nurtured these hopes, Anakin was fiercely independent and headstrong. The harsh desert life had forged in him a fiery spirit and determination to rise above his circumstances no matter the cost. This intensity would become a defining trait of his personality, propelling him forward but also making him vulnerable to the darker impulses of fear and anger. The course of Anakin's life shifted dramatically when Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi arrived on Tatooine during a mission to protect Queen Amidala of Naboo. Qui-Gon was a wise and unconventional Jedi, known for his deep connection to the living Force and his ability to sense the hidden potential in individuals. When Qui-Gon encountered Anakin, he immediately sensed the boy's extraordinary Force sensitivity, confirmed by an unusually high midi-chlorian count, higher even than that of the legendary Jedi Master Yoda. This measurement indicated that Anakin was one of the most powerful Force users the galaxy had ever seen. Qui-Gon's belief in Anakin's destiny was unwavering. He saw in the boy not just a powerful Force sensitive, but the very embodiment of the Chosen One prophecy, the figure destined to restore balance between the light and dark sides of the Force. This conviction was so strong that Qui-Gon defied the Jedi Council's cautious stance. The Council was hesitant to accept Anakin as a trainee due to his age. He was older than the typical initiate, and because of the intense emotions that Qui-Gon sensed in him, emotions that could easily lead to the dark side. Despite the Council's reservations, Qui-Gon was determined. He made a bold decision to free Anakin from slavery, a risky move that required winning a dangerous and high-stakes pod race. This pod race was a brutal contest of speed and skill, with racers hurtling at terrifying velocities through narrow canyon tracks lined with lethal obstacles. Anakin's victory was not only a testament to his piloting ability but also a turning point that changed the course of his life. With the winnings, Qui-Gon purchased Anakin's freedom and took him under his wing, pledging to bring him to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant for formal training. The transition from the dusty streets of Mos Espa to the sprawling metropolis of Coruscant was profound. Anakin was thrust into a world of rigid rules, ancient traditions, and political complexities. The Jedi Temple was a place of discipline and study, where young initiates trained for years to master the ways of the Force and become peacekeepers of the galaxy. Anakin's arrival was met with skepticism and concern from the Jedi Council, who feared that his strong emotions and attachments could jeopardize his training and the Order's mission. Anakin's early years as a Padawan learner were marked by intense challenges. Training under Obi-Wan Kenobi, who had taken over as his master after Qui-Gon's death, Anakin struggled to reconcile his natural abilities with the Jedi's strict codes of conduct. He found it difficult to suppress his emotions, especially his fear of loss and his desire for attachment, which were seen as dangerous pathways to the dark side. Nevertheless, his prodigious talents made him an exceptional student. He was agile, quick-witted, and developed a unique rapport with his lightsaber, wielding it with a combination of raw power and instinctive grace. Despite his prowess, Anakin's personality was a complex mix of admirable qualities and troubling flaws. He was courageous and loyal, often placing himself in harm's way to protect those he cared about. He exhibited leadership qualities that inspired his peers and commanders alike. However, these strengths were tempered by impatience, recklessness, and a tendency to challenge authority. His youthful arrogance sometimes clashed with the measured wisdom of the Jedi elders, creating tension and distrust. Anakin's past as a slave and the loss of his mother instilled in him a deep and abiding fear of abandonment and suffering. This fear became a critical weakness, influencing many of his decisions and ultimately contributing to his tragic fall. His attachment to those he loved, especially Padme Amidala, whom he secretly married, was a direct violation of Jedi teachings forbidding emotional attachments. Yet Anakin's love was genuine and passionate, fueling both his greatness and his vulnerability. Throughout this formative period, the bond between Anakin and Obi-Wan grew into one of the most significant relationships of his life. Obi-Wan served as a mentor, brother figure, and sometimes a father figure, offering guidance and discipline. Their relationship was layered, marked by respect, affection, rivalry, and occasional frustration. Obi-Wan's attempts to temper Anakin's impulsiveness and keep him focused on the Jedi way were met with mixed results, as Anakin's independent spirit resisted control. Following the dramatic and transformative moment when Anakin Skywalker was freed from slavery on Tatooine and brought to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, his life entered a phase of rigorous training and profound change. The Jedi Temple was a place unlike any other in the galaxy, an ancient bastion of knowledge, discipline, and spiritual practice dedicated to maintaining peace and balance in a tumultuous universe. For Anakin, the transition to this new world was both exhilarating and fraught with challenges that would test his character, his loyalty, and his very identity. The Jedi Order was steeped in centuries of tradition and governed by a strict code that demanded emotional restraint, humility, and unwavering commitment to the light side of the Force. Younglings began their training early in life, learning to control their emotions, hone their connection to the Force, and master the art of lightsaber combat. However, Anakin's path was unusual in many ways. He was older than most initiates when he arrived, already carrying the weight of a difficult childhood, and his emotional intensity was far beyond the norm for Jedi trainees. Anakin's formal training was assigned to Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi Knight who had been the apprentice of Master Qui-Gon Jinn. Obi-Wan was tasked not only with teaching Anakin the skills of the Jedi, but also with guiding him through the internal struggle that would define his future. The relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin was complex and deeply significant, marked by mutual respect, affection, and occasional tension. Obi-Wan was disciplined and cautious, embodying the Jedi ideals, while Anakin was impulsive and passionate, often pushing against the limits set by the Order. The early days of training were marked by both triumphs and difficulties. Anakin's natural talent was undeniable. He quickly mastered many of the physical and metaphysical skills taught by the Jedi. His reflexes were lightning fast, his instincts razor-sharp, and his ability to sense disturbances in the Force was exceptional. On the training grounds, he excelled in lightsaber combat, demonstrating a fierce and aggressive style that combined raw power with impressive agility. His mind was keen for tactics and strategy, and he absorbed knowledge about the Force with an eagerness unmatched by many of his peers. Yet alongside these talents were the persistent shadows of his inner turmoil. Anakin struggled to control his emotions, especially his anger and fear, emotions that the Jedi viewed as dangerous paths leading to the dark side. The death of his mother Shmi, which occurred after Anakin was away training, was a devastating blow that deepened his fear of loss and fueled his anger. This trauma remained buried inside him, unspoken but always simmering beneath the surface, threatening to erupt. The Jedi Order's strict prohibition on attachments weighed heavily on Anakin. His bond with his mother had been the first deep connection of his life, and her loss left a gaping wound. Later, his secret marriage to Padme Amidala, a beloved senator from Naboo, was a testament to his defiance of Jedi rules and his struggle to reconcile his personal desires with his duties. This attachment became a core source of conflict, as the Jedi taught that emotional ties could cloud judgment and lead to suffering. Anakin's inability to let go of love and attachment marked him as different and vulnerable. During this period, Anakin's relationship with Obi-Wan developed into something akin to brotherhood, with Obi-Wan assuming the role of protector and guide. Obi-Wan often found himself playing the role of a cautious voice of reason, trying to temper Anakin's impulsive nature and prevent him from crossing dangerous lines. Their interactions could be tense, especially when Anakin felt misunderstood or restricted. Yet there was also genuine affection and respect, and Obi-Wan's faith in Anakin's potential never wavered despite the younger Jedi's struggles. Beyond the Jedi Temple, Anakin's training included real-world missions alongside Obi-Wan and other Jedi, particularly during the tumultuous period of the Clone Wars. These conflicts thrust Anakin into leadership roles at a young age, forcing him to make critical decisions under immense pressure. His skills as a pilot, strategist, and warrior were put to the test repeatedly. In battle, Anakin was both fearless and ferocious, often leading troops into combat with a mix of tactical brilliance and raw courage. His reputation as a hero grew throughout the galaxy, bolstering the Jedi's hopes that he would fulfill the Chosen One prophecy. However, the battlefield also amplified the contradictions within Anakin. While his courage inspired allies, his impatience and willingness to use aggressive tactics sometimes caused friction. The horrors of war exposed him to suffering and death on a scale that deeply affected him, increasing his desperation to prevent loss at any cost. His desire to protect those he loved, particularly Padme, intensified, and this desperation began to blur the lines between his duty as a Jedi and his personal fears. Another pivotal figure during Anakin's early Jedi years was Chancellor Palpatine, the political leader of the Galactic Republic who took a special interest in the young Jedi. Palpatine's mentorship was subtle yet profound, offering Anakin a sense of understanding and camaraderie that he often lacked within the Jedi Order. Palpatine listened to Anakin's fears and frustrations and seemed to offer solutions that resonated deeply with him. This relationship planted seeds of doubt in Anakin's mind about the Jedi Council's true intentions and about the rigid dogma he was expected to follow. Palpatine's influence grew stronger as the Clone Wars progressed, positioning himself as a confidant and advisor to Anakin. He exploited the Jedi's fears and Anakin's vulnerabilities, subtly guiding him toward the dark side by promising the power to save those Anakin cared about. The allure of this power was irresistible to a young man torn between love, duty, and fear. The Chancellor's mentorship exploited Anakin's impatience with the Jedi Council's perceived hypocrisy and rigidity, further isolating him from the Order. Throughout these years, Anakin's internal conflict became increasingly pronounced. His intense emotions made him vulnerable to manipulation, yet they also fueled his extraordinary abilities. He was a paradox, a young man who sought peace and balance but was driven by anger and fear. The Jedi teachings, which emphasized calm detachment, often clashed with Anakin's passionate nature and his deep attachments to family and friends. Anakin's relationships outside the Jedi Order also played a crucial role during this time. His secret marriage to Padme Amidala was a source of great joy but also profound risk. The secrecy was necessary to protect both their lives and positions, but it added to Anakin's stress and sense of isolation. Padme herself was a strong and compassionate figure who understood Anakin's burdens but could not fully grasp the forces pulling him toward darkness. The Clone Wars era was a defining chapter in Anakin Skywalker's life and in the fate of the galaxy itself. As the Republic was plunged into an expansive conflict against the Separatist forces, Anakin's role evolved dramatically. From a talented Padawan to a celebrated Jedi general, his journey was marked by heroic battles, complex relationships, and deepening inner conflicts that ultimately paved the way for his tragic fall. This period not only showcased his extraordinary capabilities but also highlighted the tensions and vulnerabilities that would haunt him. The Clone Wars erupted after years of political unrest and manipulation by Sith Lord Darth Sidious, who, as Chancellor Palpatine, orchestrated a galaxy-wide crisis to consolidate power. The Separatists, led by Count Dooku, waged war with massive armies of battle droids, forcing the Jedi Order to lead the Republic's military response. Anakin quickly emerged as one of the most skilled and daring commanders in this desperate struggle. His natural talents as a pilot, warrior, and strategist became legendary. Anakin's uncanny ability to anticipate enemy moves, combined with his fearless leadership, inspired troops and fellow Jedi alike. He was promoted to Jedi Knight and appointed a general in the Grand Army of the Republic, commanding clone troopers in numerous critical battles across the galaxy. His partnership with his loyal astromech droid, R2-D2, was indispensable, with R2 frequently saving Anakin from fatal situations. Throughout the war, Anakin's missions were varied and dangerous. He was involved in high-stakes engagements on planets such as Geonosis, Christophsis, and Utapau, often facing overwhelming odds. His combat prowess was evident in lightsaber duels against formidable opponents like Count Dooku and Asajj Ventress, showcasing his evolution as a master swordsman and force user. Anakin's aggressive and sometimes unorthodox tactics won victories but also earned him criticism for recklessness. One of the most significant aspects of Anakin's war experience was the deepening of his relationships with those around him. His friendship with Captain Rex and other clone troopers reflected a bond of mutual respect and loyalty uncommon among Jedi and their soldiers. Unlike many Jedi, Anakin valued individuality and comradeship, treating the clones as brothers rather than mere tools of war. This connection humanized him and highlighted his capacity for leadership beyond battle strategy. His mentorship of Ahsoka Tano, a young Padawan assigned to him during the war, was a transformative relationship for both. Initially skeptical, Anakin grew to care deeply for Ahsoka, becoming a protective and inspiring teacher. Ahsoka's journey paralleled and sometimes contrasted with Anakin's own struggles, emphasizing themes of trust, loyalty, and growth within the Jedi tradition. Their partnership also exposed the difficulties of balancing Jedi discipline with personal connection, especially as the war's pressures mounted. Meanwhile, Anakin's secret marriage to Padme Amidala continued amid the chaos of war. The stakes of their hidden relationship grew higher as the galaxy destabilized. Padme's political role as a senator fighting for peace and justice was increasingly dangerous, and Anakin's concern for her safety intensified his inner turmoil. His fears of losing her echoed the pain of his mother's death, deepening his desperation and making him susceptible to darker influences. The Jedi Council's growing unease about Anakin's behavior added strain. His tendency to act on impulse, his frustration with the Council's cautious approach, and his closeness to Chancellor Palpatine raised suspicions. The Council's mistrust isolated Anakin, who saw their actions as betrayal rather than protection. This alienation contributed to his gradual drift away from the Jedi Order's strict orthodoxy and closer toward Palpatine's manipulations. Palpatine's influence during the Clone Wars was subtle yet profound. Presenting himself as a sympathetic leader who understood Anakin's burdens, Palpatine skillfully exploited the Jedi's weaknesses and Anakin's fears. He promised knowledge and power that the Jedi would not offer, especially the power to prevent death and suffering, the very thing Anakin most desperately sought. This political and personal manipulation deepened Anakin's internal conflict, sowing seeds of doubt and ambition. Amid these external and internal battles, Anakin faced several critical moments that tested his loyalty and morals. His capture and subsequent rescue on the planet Christophus, his confrontations with Count Dooku, and his covert missions to uncover separatist plots showcased his bravery and determination, but also highlighted his willingness to bend rules and take dangerous risks. These actions won him admiration and fame, but also widened the gap between him and the Jedi Code. A particularly harrowing episode was Anakin's descent into vengeful fury after the death of his mother Shmi Skywalker, a loss he blamed on the Tusken Raiders. This personal tragedy fueled a dark episode where Anakin slaughtered the entire Tusken Raider camp in a fit of rage, marking one of his earliest steps toward the dark side. This act revealed the depth of his capacity for darkness and the fragile boundary he walked between justice and vengeance. As the war progressed, Anakin's increasing reliance on Palpatine and his growing mistrust of the Jedi Council culminated in his secret apprenticeship to Darth Sidious. This decision was born of fear and hope, the hope to save Padme from a mysterious vision of death, and the fear of losing everything he loved. Palpatine promised Anakin the forbidden knowledge of the dark side that could prevent death, a promise that weighed heavily against the Jedi teachings. Throughout the Clone Wars, Anakin's powers grew exponentially. He was recognized as one of the most powerful Force users of his generation, wielding abilities in telekinesis, precognition, and lightsaber combat with unmatched skill. Yet his growing power was accompanied by increasing emotional instability, impulsiveness, and a readiness to use violence without restraint. His tendency to see the galaxy in black and white terms, good versus evil, friend versus foe, made him vulnerable to manipulation and rash decisions. His iconic duel with Count Dooku aboard the Invisible Hand marked a significant milestone. It was here that Anakin's boldness and raw power were on full display as he defeated his master's rival, severing Dooku's hands and ultimately killing him despite Obi-Wan's attempt to stop him. This act was a crucial step in Anakin's fall, demonstrating his growing ruthlessness and willingness to cross moral boundaries. In summary, the Clone Wars years were a crucible for Anakin Skywalker, a period of extraordinary achievement shadowed by deepening conflict. He rose as a heroic figure, revered for his skill and courage, but also struggled with fear, anger, and loyalty. The relationships he formed, the battles he fought, and the choices he made all wove together to shape the man who would become Darth Vader. The war illuminated his strengths and weaknesses, highlighting the tragic duality at his core. Anakin was both savior and destroyer, hero and victim of destiny. His journey during these years was not only a saga of galactic conflict but also a profound story of a young man wrestling with power, love, fear, and identity in a universe on the brink of darkness. The fall of Anakin Skywalker stands as one of the most profound and tragic narratives within the Star Wars saga. What began as a journey of hope and heroism evolved into a cautionary tale of fear, betrayal, and the catastrophic consequences of unchecked power. This part of Anakin's history is characterized by pivotal decisions, personal loss, and a gradual surrender to darkness, culminating in the rise of the Sith Lord known as Darth Vader. Throughout the Clone Wars, Anakin was burdened not only by the responsibilities of war, but also by a series of personal and emotional challenges that chipped away at his loyalty to the Jedi Order. His secret marriage to Padme Amidala was a source of both joy and anxiety, as the Jedi Code strictly forbade attachments. Anakin's fear of losing her grew after a troubling vision in which he foresaw her death in childbirth. This vision haunted him and planted a seed of desperation that Palpatine skillfully nurtured. Chancellor Palpatine, secretly Darth Sidious, the Sith mastermind behind the Clone Wars, manipulated Anakin with great cunning. Recognizing Anakin's fears and ambitions, Sidious positioned himself as a mentor and father figure who could offer knowledge and power beyond the Jedi's teachings. He promised Anakin the ability to prevent death, a power the Jedi claimed was forbidden or impossible. This promise was a powerful temptation for a man driven by love and fear. The tension between Anakin's Jedi duties and his personal desires grew increasingly untenable. The Jedi Council's suspicion of Palpatine and its warnings about Anakin's behavior further isolated him. They assigned Anakin to spy on the Chancellor, a mission that deepened Anakin's conflict as he struggled to reconcile his loyalty to the Republic with his growing mistrust of the Jedi. Feeling misunderstood and betrayed, Anakin's relationship with the Jedi Order deteriorated. The turning point came when Palpatine revealed his Sith identity and offered Anakin a place at his side as his new apprentice. Palpatine's offer was irresistible: the power to save Padme, to end the war swiftly, and to bring order to a galaxy beset by chaos. Faced with impossible choices, Anakin succumbed to fear and ambition, pledging himself to the dark side and receiving the Sith name Darth Vader. As Darth Vader, Anakin was transformed both physically and spiritually. His fall was symbolized by the iconic black armor and mask that concealed his identity and humanity. The injuries he suffered in a deadly duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi on Mustafar left him dependent on life support systems, further binding him to the dark side and his new master. This transformation was not only physical but psychological. The man who once dreamed of peace became a symbol of terror and oppression. The consequences of Anakin's fall were immediate and devastating. He led the purge of the Jedi Order, executing Order 66, which commanded clone troopers to kill their Jedi generals. This betrayal shattered the Republic's defenders and paved the way for Palpatine's declaration of the Galactic Empire. Anakin's actions caused irreparable harm to those he once loved and served, severing ties with Obi-Wan Kenobi and destroying the Jedi ideals he once upheld. Despite his transformation into Darth Vader, remnants of Anakin's former self lingered beneath the surface. His love for Padme and the pain of his loss continued to haunt him. The birth of his children, Luke and Leia, was kept secret from him, but their existence represented hope and redemption in the galaxy's darkest hour. Vader's story would eventually intertwine with theirs, setting the stage for the final chapters of his redemption. In this period, the galaxy itself changed dramatically. The Clone Wars ended, replaced by the iron rule of the Empire. Fear and control replaced freedom and democracy. Anakin's transformation was not only personal but emblematic of a larger fall from light to shadow, a metaphor for the dangers of absolute power and corruption. The relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi reached its tragic climax during their duel on Mustafar. Once master and apprentice, brothers in arms, they became mortal enemies. Their fierce battle was a painful confrontation of ideals, friendship, and broken trust. Obi-Wan's victory left Anakin severely wounded and cast into darkness, both literally and figuratively. This fight encapsulated the personal cost of Anakin's choices and the loss experienced by both men. In the years following his fall, Darth Vader became the enforcer of the Emperor's will. His presence inspired fear across star systems as he hunted down remaining Jedi and quelled rebellion. His identity as Anakin Skywalker was buried under layers of fear, anger, and duty. Yet the struggle between his past and present self simmered beneath the surface, setting the stage for his eventual return to the light. The fall of Anakin Skywalker is a tale of tragic irony. The very desire to protect those he loved drove him to betray them and himself. His story serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of fear, the cost of ambition, and the hope of redemption. It is a narrative that resonates beyond the Star Wars universe, touching on universal themes of choice, consequence, and forgiveness. Anakin Skywalker's relationships are integral to understanding his character and the course of his life. From childhood bonds to complex friendships and deep romances, these connections shaped his choices, fueled his strengths, and ultimately contributed to his downfall and redemption. Exploring these relationships reveals the human side of a figure often defined by myth and legend. At the heart of Anakin's story is his bond with his mother, Shmi Skywalker. She was a constant source of love and grounding during his early years on Tatooine. As a slave, Shmi endured hardship, but her devotion to Anakin was unwavering. Their relationship was marked by deep affection and sacrifice. Shmi's nurturing gave Anakin hope and a sense of belonging in a harsh world, but her eventual kidnapping and death at the hands of Tusken Raiders unleashed a torrent of grief and rage in him. This loss was pivotal, awakening a darkness fueled by pain and helplessness. It was the first time Anakin confronted the limits of his power and the fragility of life, shaping his fear of losing those he loved. Anakin's mentorship with Obi-Wan Kenobi was one of the most significant and complicated relationships of his life. Obi-Wan served as teacher, friend, and sometimes father figure. Their bond was forged in the trials of the Clone Wars and Jedi training, grounded in mutual respect but strained by contrasting temperaments. Obi-Wan's cautious and disciplined approach often clashed with Anakin's impulsiveness and passion. While Obi-Wan tried to temper Anakin's emotions and guide him on the Jedi path, Anakin sometimes viewed him as an obstacle to his ambitions and desires. Despite moments of rivalry and frustration, their friendship remained deep and meaningful, culminating in the tragic duel on Mustafar. This confrontation was not just a battle of lightsabers but a heartbreak, a final painful separation of mentor and pupil who once trusted each other implicitly. Romantic love played a transformative and tragic role in Anakin's life, primarily through his secret marriage to Padme Amidala. Padme, the former queen and then senator of Naboo, was a figure of grace, strength, and compassion. Their love was intense and genuine, born amidst political turmoil and war. Yet, it was also fraught with secrecy and fear of loss. The Jedi Code forbade attachments, and this forced Anakin and Padme to hide their union. Anakin's profound attachment to Padme fueled his desire to protect her at all costs, but also exacerbated his fear of losing her, which the dark side exploited. Padme's pregnancy intensified his desperation, leading him to seek power to save her from a fate he believed was inevitable. Tragically, this fear blinded him to the consequences of his actions and led to choices that ultimately destroyed their relationship and her life. Another key relationship was with Chancellor Palpatine, later revealed as Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord manipulating galactic events. Palpatine skillfully positioned himself as a mentor and friend to Anakin, exploiting his vulnerabilities and ambitions. He offered guidance, secret knowledge, and a vision of unlimited power that appealed to Anakin's desire to protect and control. Unlike the Jedi who emphasized restraint, Palpatine validated Anakin's feelings and ambitions, fostering dependence and trust. This toxic relationship slowly eroded Anakin's loyalty to the Jedi Order and paved the way for his fall to the dark side. Palpatine's manipulation underscores the tragic aspect of Anakin's story, a young man betrayed by those he once trusted and led astray by promises of salvation. Anakin's interactions with fellow Jedi also influenced his path. His friendships and rivalries within the Order shaped his sense of belonging and isolation. For example, his camaraderie with Ahsoka Tano, his Padawan learner, brought out a protective and mentoring side. Their bond was close and complex, blending respect, affection, and shared challenges in the war. Ahsoka's eventual departure from the Jedi Order due to disillusionment deeply affected Anakin, reinforcing his doubts about the Jedi Council's wisdom and fairness. His strained relationship with the Council itself, who often doubted and mistrusted him, heightened his feelings of alienation. This distrust contributed to his rebellion against Jedi teachings and made him more receptive to Palpatine's influence. Anakin's relationship with his children, Luke and Leia, though limited in time, is crucial to his legacy. Unknown to him for much of his life, these bonds represented hope and a path to redemption. Luke's faith in his father, unwavering despite Vader's fearsome reputation, became the key to Anakin's salvation. Leia's strength and compassion echoed the light side qualities that contrasted with her father's darkness. Though Anakin's direct interaction with his children was brief, the familial connection symbolized the enduring power of love and the possibility of breaking cycles of pain. Romantic relationships beyond Padme are less explored but are hinted at in various extended stories. These connections add layers to Anakin's emotional complexity, showing a man capable of deep love but often trapped by his fears and ambitions. In sum, Anakin Skywalker's relationships were the threads that wove his fate. Love and loss, mentorship and rivalry, friendship and betrayal, they all shaped the man behind the mask. These connections reveal a deeply human figure struggling with emotions and loyalties, caught between duty and desire. They underscore the tragic nature of his fall and the hope embedded in his redemption. Understanding these relationships offers insight into the motivations and vulnerabilities of one of Star Wars' most iconic characters. Anakin was not merely a warrior or a symbol. He was a son, a friend, a lover, a father, a man whose heart was as central to his story as his extraordinary powers. Anakin Skywalker's relationships are integral to understanding his character and the course of his life. From childhood bonds to complex friendships and deep romances, these connections shaped his choices, fueled his strengths, and ultimately contributed to his downfall and redemption. Exploring these relationships reveals the human side of a figure often defined by myth and legend. At the heart of Anakin's story is his bond with his mother, Shmi Skywalker. She was a constant source of love and grounding during his early years on Tatooine. As a slave, Shmi endured hardship, but her devotion to Anakin was unwavering. Their relationship was marked by deep affection and sacrifice. Shmi's nurturing gave Anakin hope and a sense of belonging in a harsh world, but her eventual kidnapping and death at the hands of Tusken Raiders unleashed a torrent of grief and rage in him. This loss was pivotal, awakening a darkness fueled by pain and helplessness. It was the first time Anakin confronted the limits of his power and the fragility of life, shaping his fear of losing those he loved. Anakin's mentorship with Obi-Wan Kenobi was one of the most significant and complicated relationships of his life. Obi-Wan served as teacher, friend, and sometimes father figure. Their bond was forged in the trials of the Clone Wars and Jedi training, grounded in mutual respect but strained by contrasting temperaments. Obi-Wan's cautious and disciplined approach often clashed with Anakin's impulsiveness and passion. While Obi-Wan tried to temper Anakin's emotions and guide him on the Jedi path, Anakin sometimes viewed him as an obstacle to his ambitions and desires. Despite moments of rivalry and frustration, their friendship remained deep and meaningful, culminating in the tragic duel on Mustafar. This confrontation was not just a battle of lightsabers but a heartbreak, a final painful separation of mentor and pupil who once trusted each other implicitly. Romantic love played a transformative and tragic role in Anakin's life, primarily through his secret marriage to Padme Amidala. Padme, the former queen and then senator of Naboo, was a figure of grace, strength, and compassion. Their love was intense and genuine, born amidst political turmoil and war. Yet, it was also fraught with secrecy and fear of loss. The Jedi Code forbade attachments, and this forced Anakin and Padme to hide their union. Anakin's profound attachment to Padme fueled his desire to protect her at all costs but also exacerbated his fear of losing her, which the dark side exploited. Padme's pregnancy intensified his desperation, leading him to seek power to save her from a fate he believed was inevitable. Tragically, this fear blinded him to the consequences of his actions and led to choices that ultimately destroyed their relationship and her life. Another key relationship was with Chancellor Palpatine, later revealed as Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord manipulating galactic events. Palpatine skillfully positioned himself as a mentor and friend to Anakin, exploiting his vulnerabilities and ambitions. He offered guidance, secret knowledge, and a vision of unlimited power that appealed to Anakin's desire to protect and control. Unlike the Jedi who emphasized restraint, Palpatine validated Anakin's feelings and ambitions, fostering dependence and trust. This toxic relationship slowly eroded Anakin's loyalty to the Jedi Order and paved the way for his fall to the dark side. Palpatine's manipulation underscores the tragic aspect of Anakin's story, a young man betrayed by those he once trusted and led astray by promises of salvation. Anakin's interactions with fellow Jedi also influenced his path. His friendships and rivalries within the Order shaped his sense of belonging and isolation. For example, his camaraderie with Ahsoka Tano, his Padawan learner, brought out a protective and mentoring side. Their bond was close and complex, blending respect, affection, and shared challenges in the war. Ahsoka's eventual departure from the Jedi Order due to disillusionment deeply affected Anakin, reinforcing his doubts about the Jedi Council's wisdom and fairness. His strained relationship with the Council itself, who often doubted and mistrusted him, heightened his feelings of alienation. This distrust contributed to his rebellion against Jedi teachings and made him more receptive to Palpatine's influence. Anakin's relationship with his children, Luke and Leia, though limited in time, is crucial to his legacy. Unknown to him for much of his life, these bonds represented hope and a path to redemption. Luke's faith in his father, unwavering despite Vader's fearsome reputation, became the key to Anakin's salvation. Leia's strength and compassion echoed the light side qualities that contrasted with her father's darkness. Though Anakin's direct interaction with his children was brief, the familial connection symbolized the enduring power of love and the possibility of breaking cycles of pain. Romantic relationships beyond Padme are less explored but are hinted at in various extended stories. These connections add layers to Anakin's emotional complexity, showing a man capable of deep love but often trapped by his fears and ambitions. In sum, Anakin Skywalker's relationships were the threads that wove his fate. Love and loss, mentorship and rivalry, friendship and betrayal. they all shaped the man behind the mask. These connections reveal a deeply human figure struggling with emotions and loyalties, caught between duty and desire. They underscore the tragic nature of his fall and the hope embedded in his redemption. Understanding these relationships offers insight into the motivations and vulnerabilities of one of Star Wars' most iconic characters. Anakin was not merely a warrior or a symbol. He was a son, a friend, a lover, a father, a man whose heart was as central to his story as his extraordinary powers. Anakin Skywalker's journey through the Clone Wars represents one of the most crucial and defining chapters in his life, a period that shaped his identity not only as a skilled warrior and leader, but ultimately as a tragic figure whose destiny was intertwined with the fate of the galaxy. The Clone Wars themselves were a massive and complex conflict that engulfed countless star systems and countless lives. They were more than just a military confrontation between the Galactic Republic and the Separatist Alliance. For Anakin, this war was a crucible that tested his resolve, morality, personal beliefs, and loyalties in ways he had never imagined. To truly understand Anakin's transformation, how a hopeful young Jedi could become Darth Vader, it is essential to examine his role and experiences throughout this tumultuous period. The war exposed both his remarkable strengths and fatal weaknesses, ultimately setting the stage for his fall to the dark side. When the Clone Wars erupted, Anakin quickly distinguished himself as one of the Republic's most talented, daring, and aggressive generals. His unique combination of raw physical ability, natural piloting skills, and extraordinary force sensitivity made him a formidable presence on any battlefield. Unlike many of his fellow Jedi who approached their military responsibilities with cautious adherence to Jedi doctrine, Anakin's approach was bold and sometimes reckless. He was willing to take risks others would not, often devising unorthodox strategies in the midst of combat. His instincts were sharp, and he was capable of quick improvisation when situations changed unexpectedly. This unpredictability in battle was both a strength and a source of frustration to his allies. Yet, it was precisely this fearless attitude that allowed him to lead troops to victory in numerous engagements. Anakin's leadership style during the Clone Wars was notable not only for his battlefield prowess but also for his personal connection with the clone troopers under his command. Unlike other commanders who treated clones as faceless soldiers or mere tools of war, Anakin saw them as individuals with unique personalities and value. He forged strong bonds with his troops, earning their respect and loyalty through acts of courage and empathy. Anakin frequently put himself in harm's way to protect his men and shared their hardships during campaigns. This camaraderie helped build morale and fostered a sense of unity on the battlefield, which was critical during extended and brutal engagements. His clone troopers viewed him not just as a commander but as a comrade and protector. This deep connection reflected Anakin's underlying compassion, even amidst the violence of war. However, Anakin's leadership was not without controversy. His impatience with bureaucracy and rigid Jedi protocol sometimes led him to clash with other commanders and the Jedi Council. His tendency to act first and question orders later raised concerns about his discipline and control. The Jedi, committed to principles of detachment and restraint, often found themselves at odds with Anakin's passionate and impulsive nature. Despite these tensions, Anakin's undeniable effectiveness and success on the battlefield ensured his continued prominence within the Republic's war effort. Yet, these clashes foreshadowed growing conflicts between Anakin's personal code and the Jedi Order's expectations. Throughout the Clone Wars, Anakin was entrusted with a variety of high-stakes missions that demonstrated the breadth of his skills and bravery. He was involved in both large-scale assaults and secretive covert operations. From leading the assault on Geonosis, the war's opening battle and a pivotal moment for the Republic, to commanding campaigns on planets such as Christophsis and Ryloth, Anakin was frequently at the center of key galactic events. His ability to adapt to diverse combat scenarios, whether piloting starfighters in aerial dogfights or leading ground troops in planetary battles, made him invaluable. These campaigns tested not only his tactical acumen but also his leadership under pressure. On many occasions, Anakin's determination and force-guided intuition saved his troops from devastating losses. His opposition to the Separatists often brought him into direct conflict with powerful adversaries such as Count Dooku, his former Jedi Master turned Sith Lord, and General Grievous, the fearsome cyborg commander of the Separatist droid armies. Anakin's duels with these foes were intense and personal. Each confrontation was a microcosm of the larger struggle between light and dark. Anakin sought not only to defeat his enemies but also to prove his own strength and destiny as the Chosen One. The battles with Dooku were particularly significant, as they underscored the complexity of Anakin's inner conflict. Dooku represented a dark path Anakin was warned to avoid, yet his adversary's power and charisma intrigued and challenged him. These encounters further exposed Anakin's aggressive tendencies and his struggle to maintain Jedi discipline. Anakin's experience during the Clone Wars was not limited to combat. The war profoundly affected his personal life and emotional well-being. His secret marriage to Senator Padme Amidala added an intense layer of complexity to his duties. The physical separation imposed by the war, coupled with the constant danger he faced, fueled Anakin's deep-seated fear of losing her. This fear, rooted partly in the trauma of losing his mother years earlier, became a driving force in his actions. The emotional burden of balancing his love for Padme with his responsibilities as a Jedi and military leader strained him considerably. The war's relentless violence and loss hardened Anakin, while simultaneously making him more desperate for control and certainty in his life. His experiences on the battlefield exposed him to harsh realities that tested his ethics and pushed him ever closer to the edge of the light side. A particularly significant aspect of Anakin's role in the Clone Wars was his mentorship of Ahsoka Tano, the young Togruta assigned to him as his Padawan learner. Their relationship added a vital dimension to Anakin's character development. As her mentor, Anakin assumed greater responsibility and showed a more nurturing side, though he remained his usual fiery self. Together, they faced numerous trials, from high-risk combat missions to espionage and rescue operations. The bond between Anakin and Ahsoka was deep and complex. They trusted and learned from one another. However, Ahsoka's eventual departure from the Jedi Order was a profound blow to Anakin. It reinforced his growing mistrust of the Jedi Council and exacerbated his feelings of isolation. This loss contributed to his internal turmoil, further destabilizing his sense of belonging. Anakin Skywalker's journey through the Clone Wars was as much an internal battle as it was a series of external conflicts. While his feats on the battlefield were legendary, the true struggle lay within, a war waging inside his heart and mind. The complex web of emotions, loyalties, and fears he grappled with during this period reveals much about his ultimate transformation and fall. From the onset, Anakin was a man burdened by fear. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of abandonment. These fears stemmed from his childhood experiences, from being a slave on Tatooine to the trauma of losing his mother, Shmi Skywalker. That loss haunted him deeply. His desperate search for her, only to find her dying in the clutches of Tusken Raiders, shattered the last remnants of his innocence. This event exposed the dark and violent impulses buried within him, impulses that would later manifest more fully as rage and vengeance. Anakin's massacre of the Tusken Raiders was a grim turning point, revealing how personal grief could fuel a descent into darkness. It was a moment where compassion and fury collided, illustrating the fragile balance of his soul. Throughout the Clone Wars, Anakin's relationship with Obi-Wan Kenobi was a central pillar in his life. Obi-Wan was not just his former master but also a brother, mentor, and sometimes a surrogate father figure. Their bond was deep but often fraught with tension. Obi-Wan represented the Jedi Order's ideals, discipline, patience, and restraint, that Anakin struggled to fully embrace. Conversely, Anakin's impulsive nature and emotional intensity frequently frustrated Obi-Wan, who saw the dangers in his apprentice's recklessness. Their dynamic was one of mutual respect tempered by conflict. Obi-Wan's unwavering faith in Anakin was a source of strength, but it also highlighted the limits of what guidance could achieve against Anakin's growing inner darkness. Another crucial relationship during the war was with Padme Amidala, Anakin's secret wife. Their love was passionate and profound, but fraught with danger and secrecy. The Jedi Code forbade attachment, yet Anakin's bond with Padme defied this edict, becoming a source of both joy and torment. The physical separation imposed by his military duties and the perilous nature of the galaxy's turmoil intensified Anakin's fear of losing her. This fear was the driving force behind many of his later decisions, including his willingness to embrace forbidden powers. Their love story, while tender, was overshadowed by tragedy and foreshadowed the devastating consequences of Anakin's quest to protect those he loved at any cost. The war also revealed Anakin's growing alienation from the Jedi Order. He felt increasingly constrained by their rules and disillusioned by their perceived hypocrisy. The Jedi Council's cautious approach and insistence on emotional detachment clashed with Anakin's passionate nature. His frustration with the Council's refusal to grant him full membership, despite his battlefield successes, fed his sense of being undervalued and mistrusted. This sense of isolation made him more receptive to Chancellor Palpatine's manipulations, as the Sith Lord positioned himself as the understanding and supportive figure Anakin craved. Palpatine's influence was subtle but profound. He exploited Anakin's vulnerabilities with calculated patience, presenting himself as a mentor who understood the young Jedi's struggles better than the Order ever could. Palpatine's promises of power and control over death tapped into Anakin's deepest fears and desires. The Chancellor's ability to sway Anakin was not merely due to dark persuasion, but also because he filled the emotional void left by the Jedi's rejection. This political and personal relationship was a key factor in Anakin's eventual fall, demonstrating how trust and betrayal intertwined in his life. Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's Padawan, added yet another layer to his emotional landscape. Their relationship was unlike typical Jedi mentorships. Ahsoka was spirited, independent, and often challenged Anakin's authority and decisions. This partnership forced Anakin to grow beyond himself, adopting a more protective and responsible role. Ahsoka's eventual departure from the Jedi Order was a devastating blow to Anakin. It reinforced his doubts about the Council's integrity and fairness and deepened his sense of alienation. Her leaving was not just a loss of a student, but a symbolic fracturing of his faith in the Order itself. Anakin's internal turmoil was mirrored in his fluctuating use of the Force. While a Jedi was meant to use the Force as a tool for peace and defense, Anakin's connection was charged with emotion, sometimes fueling his greatest triumphs, sometimes his darkest deeds. His fear, anger, and love gave his Force abilities a volatile edge, making him extraordinarily powerful but dangerously unpredictable. This imbalance was a double-edged sword, elevating him to legendary status but also edging him closer to the dark side. The Clone Wars also placed Anakin in situations where moral clarity was often elusive. The line between right and wrong blurred in the chaos of battle and political intrigue. He had to make decisions involving life and death, often with incomplete information and under tremendous pressure. These experiences hardened him and shaped his worldview. He came to believe that decisive, sometimes ruthless action was necessary to bring about peace and order. This belief clashed with the Jedi philosophy, but aligned closely with Palpatine's vision of control. In summary, Anakin Skywalker's inner world during the Clone Wars was a battleground of competing forces: hope and fear, love and loss, loyalty and betrayal. His relationships with Obi-Wan, Padme, Ahsoka, and Palpatine all pulled him in different directions, shaping his decisions and identity. The war exposed his vulnerabilities and strengths, setting the stage for his eventual transformation. To understand Anakin is to understand this profound and painful internal conflict that defined him as much as his public heroism. Anakin Skywalker's tenure as a general in the Clone Wars was marked by numerous high-stakes battles that not only tested his skills as a warrior but also shaped the galaxy's future. These engagements highlighted his strategic brilliance, personal courage, and, at times, reckless aggression. Alongside his military exploits, Anakin's increasing involvement in the political machinations of the Republic intertwined his fate ever closer with the Chancellor Palpatine and the dark destiny that awaited him. One of Anakin's earliest significant battles was the liberation of Christophsis, a planet under Separatist control. Tasked with leading a Republic force, Anakin demonstrated both tactical innovation and a fearless combat style. He coordinated closely with Jedi and clone commanders to disrupt enemy supply lines and reclaim key positions. His daring leadership inspired his troops, earning him a reputation as an unyielding fighter. The victory at Christophsis was a boost to Republic morale and underscored Anakin's importance to the war effort. However, it was his engagements against notable Sith leaders that truly defined Anakin's wartime legacy. His confrontations with Count Dooku, the Sith Lord behind the Separatist movement, were especially critical. Their battles were more than mere military clashes. they were symbolic of the broader conflict between light and dark. Anakin's first duel with Dooku aboard the Invisible Hand during the Battle of Coruscant was a defining moment. Though ultimately defeated and captured, Anakin showed remarkable resilience. The encounter exposed his raw power, but also his lack of discipline and experience against the Sith's cunning. In a later duel on the planet Felucia, Anakin displayed tremendous growth. This fight was more evenly matched, revealing his increased mastery of lightsaber combat and Force abilities. Yet even in victory, his aggressive style was evident, foreshadowing the darker impulses growing within him. These duels were not only physical tests but emotional and psychological battles, as Dooku often taunted Anakin's fears and doubts, trying to draw him toward the dark side. The personal stakes in these confrontations fueled Anakin's obsession with defeating the Sith, blinding him at times to the greater dangers lurking in his own heart. Another pivotal moment was Anakin's role in the campaign against General Grievous, the feared cyborg leader of the separatist droid armies. On the planet Utapau, Anakin led a mission that culminated in a direct confrontation with Grievous. Displaying exceptional piloting and combat prowess, Anakin ultimately defeated Grievous in a fierce duel. This victory removed a significant threat to the Republic and elevated Anakin's status among Jedi and military leaders. Yet it also deepened his reputation as a warrior who relied on strength and aggression, traits that made some wary of his growing power. Anakin's battlefield success was intertwined with his rising political significance. His close relationship with Chancellor Palpatine was more than personal, it was deeply political. Palpatine, as the Republic's leader and a Sith Lord in disguise, used Anakin's charisma and military achievements to bolster his own power. Anakin's public image as the Republic's hero helped maintain support for the war effort and the Chancellor's expanding emergency powers. Politically, Anakin's influence grew as he was appointed to sensitive missions requiring both military skill and political savvy. His participation in diplomatic efforts, covert operations, and internal security made him a key player in the Republic's complex struggle against the Separatists. However, this dual role also exposed Anakin to the Republic's corruption and moral ambiguity, contributing to his disillusionment with the Jedi Council and its ideals. One such mission involved uncovering a plot within the Republic Senate to undermine the war effort. Anakin's investigation revealed betrayal and espionage, exposing how the conflict was being manipulated by hidden Sith agents. These revelations heightened his mistrust of the political system and increased his reliance on Palpatine, who positioned himself as the only trustworthy leader. Anakin's political role was thus inseparable from the darker currents flowing beneath the Republic's surface. Despite his successes, Anakin's approach to warfare and politics was often controversial. His tendency to act impulsively and challenge orders made him a divisive figure among Jedi and military officials. His outspoken nature and willingness to bypass traditional channels sometimes created friction with the Jedi Council and Senate representatives. Yet these same qualities endeared him to many clone troopers and citizens who saw him as a decisive and passionate defender of peace. Anakin's pivotal battles and political involvement were inseparable aspects of his journey through the Clone Wars. His military victories solidified his reputation as the Republic's greatest hero, while his political entanglements deepened his internal conflicts and set the stage for his eventual fall. Each battle was more than a contest of arms, it was a step along a path marked by glory, doubt, and darkness. In the end, Anakin Skywalker's role in the Clone Wars was a mirror of the galaxy's own turmoil. His courage and flaws, his victories and failures, embodied the war's complexity. Through his battles and political maneuvers, he shaped the fate of the Republic and, unknowingly, the rise of the Sith. Understanding these pivotal moments is crucial to grasping the full scope of Anakin's character and the tragic destiny that awaited him beyond the battlefield. Anakin Skywalker's connection with the Jedi Order was fraught with complexity, tension, and evolving emotions that deeply influenced his path. As a Jedi Knight and general in the Clone Wars, Anakin was both a symbol of hope and a source of concern within the Order. His exceptional abilities and bravery earned admiration, yet his emotional struggles, defiance of Jedi principles, and close ties to Chancellor Palpatine fostered increasing mistrust from the Jedi Council. This dynamic played a crucial role in the unraveling of Anakin's allegiance and foreshadowed his tragic fall. From the beginning of his training, Anakin's relationship with the Jedi Order was unconventional. He was older than most Padawans when he was accepted, a rarity due to his extraordinary midi-chlorian count and potential as the prophesied chosen one. However, his initial training was marked by impatience and frustration with the Jedi's strict doctrines. The Order's emphasis on detachment and emotional control clashed with Anakin's passionate nature and his deep attachments to those he loved, especially his mother and later Padme Amidala. The Jedi Council, tasked with maintaining the Order's traditions and ensuring the galaxy's balance, viewed Anakin with cautious optimism mixed with apprehension. While they recognized his talent and potential to fulfill the prophecy, they were wary of his temperament. Qui-Gon Jinn's early conviction in Anakin's destiny was tempered by the Council's concerns about the boy's emotional volatility and fears of attachment, factors that the Jedi believed could lead to the dark side. Throughout the Clone Wars, this cautious relationship grew more strained. Anakin's battlefield heroics and unorthodox tactics sometimes put him at odds with the Council's more conservative approach. His willingness to question orders and act on personal judgment challenged the Council's authority. They saw his behavior as reckless and feared it could endanger not only missions but the Jedi's reputation. One major source of tension was Anakin's secret marriage to Padme Amidala, which violated the Jedi Code forbidding attachment and romantic relationships. The Council's strict stance on emotional detachment clashed directly with Anakin's need for connection and love. Although the Jedi were unaware of his marriage for some time, their disapproval of attachments was clear in their interactions with Anakin. This hidden bond added to Anakin's inner conflict, as he struggled to reconcile his personal desires with his public duties as a Jedi. Anakin's bond with Chancellor Palpatine further complicated his relationship with the Order. Palpatine, who was secretly the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, acted as a mentor and confidant to Anakin, providing guidance and understanding that the Jedi Council often withheld. Palpatine's manipulations exploited Anakin's frustrations with the Jedi and his fears of loss, gradually turning him against the Order's teachings. The Council viewed Palpatine's growing influence over Anakin with suspicion but lacked direct evidence of the Chancellor's Sith identity, leaving them powerless to intervene effectively. The Jedi Council's distrust culminated in key moments of conflict and alienation. One example was their refusal to grant Anakin the rank of Jedi Master despite his battlefield achievements and status as Obi-Wan Kenobi's former Padawan. This denial was seen by Anakin as a personal slight and deepened his feelings of being misunderstood and undervalued. The Council's reservations about his loyalty and judgment further isolated him. Anakin's strained relationship with the Council also manifested in their handling of his Padawan, Ahsoka Tano. When Ahsoka was accused of bombing the Jedi Temple and subsequently exonerated, she chose to leave the Order, disillusioned by the Council's lack of trust and fairness. Anakin's anguish over her departure was profound and intensified his skepticism toward the Jedi leadership. He saw the Council's actions as unjust and their judgment flawed, reinforcing his growing discontent. Throughout the Clone Wars, the Jedi Order's role shifted from guardians of peace to military commanders leading clone armies. This militarization created ethical dilemmas for Anakin and others, as the spiritual mission of the Jedi conflicted with the brutal realities of war. Anakin, who thrived in battle, embraced the warrior role, but many Jedi, including the Council, were troubled by this shift. Anakin's increasing reliance on combat and aggressive tactics alienated him further from the Jedi ideals of restraint and balance. Despite these tensions, Anakin remained loyal to the Jedi cause for much of the war, believing in their mission to protect the Republic. Yet his emotional struggles, personal attachments, and political entanglements created a deep internal conflict. He felt torn between his love and fear for those close to him, his sense of duty, and his resentment toward an order that seemed inflexible and judgmental. The culmination of this fraught relationship came during the final days of the Clone Wars, as Anakin's trust in the Jedi Council reached a breaking point. When the Council ordered him to spy on Palpatine, Anakin's loyalty was divided. He was caught between the Jedi's suspicion and the Chancellor's manipulation, a wedge that widened the gap between him and the Order. This pivotal moment underscored how far Anakin had drifted from the Jedi path. Anakin's relationship with Obi-Wan Kenobi, his mentor and closest friend, was also affected by these tensions. Obi-Wan tried to guide and restrain Anakin, often acting as his conscience. Yet their bond was tested by Anakin's growing distrust of the Jedi and his own inner demons. Despite their deep friendship, the widening ideological gulf foreshadowed their eventual tragic confrontation. In the broader context of the Clone Wars, Anakin's conflicted ties to the Jedi Order illustrate the challenges faced by the Jedi during a time of galactic upheaval. Their failure to fully understand and support Anakin's unique nature, combined with their rigid adherence to tradition, contributed to his sense of isolation and vulnerability. This breakdown of trust and communication was a crucial factor in his fall to the dark side. In conclusion, Anakin Skywalker's relationship with the Jedi Order was a complex interplay of admiration, conflict, and alienation. His exceptional talents and heroic deeds earned him respect, but his emotional intensity and personal attachments made him an outlier. The Jedi Council's growing distrust and the pressures of war created a chasm that Anakin struggled to bridge. This estrangement from the Order, alongside his political entanglements and personal fears, set the stage for the transformation that would redefine his legacy and the fate of the galaxy.